first regional response to a military coup that ousted President Ali Bongo. The junta that seized power in Niger last month instructs the police to expel French ambassador to the country, Sylvain Ite, saying he no longer has diplomatic immunity. And an original animated series from Africa makes its debut on the Netflix streaming platform. The series, dubbed Super Team 4, was written by a young Zambian and takes place in a futuristic version of Zambia's capital, Lusaka. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. We begin our broadcast this Friday in South Africa, where pathologists in Johannesburg are now facing the gruesome task of identifying dozens of charred bodies and some body parts that were transported to several mortuaries across the city after one of the country's deadliest inner-city fires. That will establish if the death toll of 74 rises following Thursday's pre-dawn blaze at a 5-story building that was inhabited by mainly homeless people. Drone images shot on Friday show the burned-out apartment building. Emergency services personnel with sniffer dogs conducted 3 searches through all 5 stories of the building and believe that all bodies and body parts have been removed, according to a Johannesburg Emergency Services spokesperson. President Cyril Ramaphosa says the tragedy should act as a wake-up call to address the problem of inner-city housing. The Central African Bloc, the Economic Community of Central African States, says it is holding a second meeting on Monday to discuss the coup in Gabon. ECOWAS is urging partners led by the United Nations and the African Union to work together to support a rapid return to constitutional order after the overthrow of President Ali Bongo. Meanwhile, dozens of trucks, taxis and other vehicles are stranded at Cameroon's border with Gabon. With their livelihoods threatened, drivers are complaining of being left without clean water or any idea of when the border might reopen. Markets and trade are also halted, and residents in border towns fear the prolonged closures of land borders could harm local markets, where Gabonese citizens make up a sizable portion of customers. Why are military coups happening so frequently in Africa? It is essential to understand why they are happening, and for more perspective, VOA's Paul Ndiho spoke with Moses Kissa, Associate Professor of Political Science and Africana Studies at the North Carolina State University College of Humanities and Social Sciences.
I really pity Africans when they celebrate military coups, because the continent has been here for a long time. If coups were anything positive and progressive for the continent, Africa would be in a very different place. We have had a fair share of military coups, and yet our politics and economics remain in a shambles. The fellows who have captured power in Libreville have basically engaged in a power grab, right? I don't think they are going to be any different from Ali Bongo, and the record of military dictatorships, military juntas across the continent over the decades, the record is appalling. It's poor, whether in terms of human rights violations, whether in terms of building democratic institutions, whether you're talking about economic performance. Military governments have never fared any better than civilian governments on the continent. So I really don't understand when many people, among the African publics, pour into the streets and celebrate whenever there's a military coup in a country like Gabon. I can understand, of course, the frustration and the feeling of overcoming a monarchical rule in Libreville. But then, what is the alternative? What lies ahead for the country? Is Gabon going to be any better under a guy who is actually related to the person he has deposed and is being part of the establishment?
You talked about a resurgence of these coups. Why do you think these coups are happening? Is it because maybe some of these governments are so oblivious at what's going on around them?
When the coups took place, earlier this year and last year and the year before, they were mainly concentrated in the Sahel belt. It has also been experiencing jihadism and jihadist movements that have challenged the central state in most of those countries. and thereby ostensibly compelled the armed forces to turn on the civilian authorities with the excuse or with the explanation that the civilian leaders have failed to, provide leadership in pushing back against extremist movements, some of them tied to international jihadist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda.
I've been to Gabon 3 times. I've met the president on like numerous occasions. But then I had also an opportunity to drive around Gabon, to crisscross the country, and the reality could not be so different between what you see in Gabon, Libreville. When you drive 5 miles outside of those major cities, there is absolutely nothing to show for it.
Gabon is actually one of the few African countries, Paul, that is officially characterized as belonging to the upper middle income bracket. In other words, its GDP per capita or GNI per capita is upwards of $6,000. This is a country that has a very small population, just over 2 million, and highly endowed with with oil and other natural resources, including forestry. So what you're saying is very much emblematic of the post-colonial African crisis, where you have a country like Gabon that is so materially endowed, so materially rich, and yet most of its citizens are poor. Most of its nationals live in, very impoverished conditions. Why? Because the vast majority of the resources for the country go to the ruling elites and a few.
That was Moses Kissa, Associate Professor from North Carolina, speaking there with my colleague VOA, Paul Ndiho. Niger's military regime is revoking the diplomatic immunity of the French ambassador to the country, Sylvain It, and has ordered police to expel him from the nation. Olivia Chan has more.
Niger's junta says they have instructed police to expel the French ambassador to the country. In a statement, the junta, which seized power in a coup on July 26, says Sylvain It no longer had diplomatic immunity. The ambassador was ordered to leave within 48 hours on Friday in response to actions taken by the French government that the junta said were, quote, contrary to the interests of Niger. The visas of the ambassador and his family were cancelled, the junta said in a statement dated August 29th and confirmed as authentic by the junta's head of communications. The foreign ministry in Paris responded on Thursday, saying that the Niger coup leaders have, quote, no authority to ask France's ambassador in Niamey to leave. French President Emmanuel Macron said on Monday that the ambassador would stay in the country despite the junta's pressure and reiterated France's support to Niger's ousted president Mohamed Bazoum. And on Wednesday, hundreds of women protested outside the French embassy in Niamey, calling for France to remove its troops and military bases from the country. They banged on pots and pans, pretended to sweep and chanted anti-French slogans.
You can see we've emptied out our kitchens. We've come here with pans and spoons and cooking pots. We're here to say no to imperialism. We were born to colonialism. We're tired of letting the colonizers rule, and that's why we're here.
We don't want macaroni anymore, or whatever his name is. I don't even care to know his name. We need another type of base here. For example, Russia. May Russia come here and support us. We need Russia.
Like recent coups in neighbouring Burkina Faso and Mali, the military takeover in Niger came amid a growing wave of anti-French sentiment.
That was Olivia Chan of Reuters reporting. The third China-Africa Peace and Security Forum held in Beijing ends Saturday. It is being attended by over 100 delegates from the African Union. China is promising to work with the continent on matters of global security and counter-terrorism. For more on the event, I'm joined live via Skype from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania by Paul Nantulia, a research specialist at the Africa Center for Strategic Studies. Paul, welcome back to Africa 54.
Thank you very much, Esther. Always a pleasure to be with you on this platform.
Now, you've been following the China-Africa relations closely. What's in this forum for Africa?
Well, African countries are going to diversify their access to weaponry, especially in a climate when their credits to secure Russian weaponry have dried up because of the sanctions that have been imposed on the Russian Federation. So that is one tangible, what one can say that is one tangible benefit that African countries will get. The other things that African countries are looking for are increased slots for military training. China has become a very important destination for African militaries at different levels. In fact, China is training more African officers. Before COVID, China was training more African officers than any other industrialized country. So, there's a message now that China is sending that kind of training is going to resume. So there are tangible benefits. Regimes are also looking for support, looking for security support. There are quite a number of countries that are going into elections, and we all know that during elections, we've seen all sorts of equipment that has been purchased from the People's Republic of China. So there are tangible benefits, I guess one might say, that African countries would gain from this forum.
Paul, one may want to ask, why does China seem so interested in forging security and kind of common security strategies with the African continent?
Well, China needs African countries, right? These are 54 votes in UN institutions and the rest of and other global institutions. China needs Africa's support in popularizing and legitimizing its global security initiative. This is the new international security concept that the People's Republic of China has come up with, which is top of the agenda of this particular meeting. Secondly, China has been competing quite aggressively, not only against Western countries, but also Russia, as I mentioned before, in marketing its equipment, marketing military equipment and military hardware to African countries. It's not uncommon in these sorts of meetings for African delegates to be taken to different military facilities in the People's Republic of China. Thirdly, professional military education is an important vector for influence building. And we saw earlier this year during the visit of the foreign minister to African countries that military to military cooperation and military professionalism was going to be top of the agenda as far as China-Africa relations, security relations were concerned. So Africa is an important region for China. China is trying to establish new rules of the game. And, those countries, just their numbers, their representational strength in international institutions is very, very important. Not to mention the fact that African countries are the biggest contributors to peacekeeping operations, and China has been trying to establish itself as an important peacekeeping contributor. So, there are lots of benefits, one might say, both on the Chinese side and also on the African side.
Paul, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your insight. Paul Nantulia is a research specialist at the Africa Center for Strategic Studies. Now to the business headlines from sub-Saharan Africa, including the fallout from the coup in Gabon and a first for Uber in Africa. Here's David Doyle.
Here's what's been making the business headlines in sub-Saharan Africa this week. Dozens of trucks, taxis and other vehicles were stranded at Cameroon's border on Thursday after military leaders in Gabon overthrew President Ali Bongo and closed the borders indefinitely. The coup has triggered the steepest daily drop in Gabon's dollar bonds since the height of the global health crisis. Nigeria's dollar bonds also fell on Thursday by more than 2 cents before retracing some losses, TradeWeb data showed. That's after local media reports of an issue with a $3 billion oil-backed loan to state oil company NNPC from Afreximbank. An NNPC spokesman denied the loans had collapsed and said talks were underway. Also in oil, Shell said its Cullinan 1X offshore exploration well in Namibia has not made a commercial oil and gas discovery. Namibia is yet to produce any oil and gas, but has attracted strong interest from international companies after recent discoveries off the coast. The European Union is scouting Africa to back clean jet fuel projects for the Global Gateway Infrastructure Fund, an EU official has said. The EU has pledged half of its $324 billion infrastructure plan, seen as a rival to China's Belt and Road Initiative, to Africa. And finally, Uber launched an electric motorbike service in Kenya on Thursday, its first in Africa. That's as the ride-hailing firm seeks to make its global platform emissions-free by 2040. Uber's general manager for sub-Saharan Africa, Kagiso Hwale, teased that the rollout in Kenya will be followed by a potential announcement this year for the rest of its markets in the region.
David of Reuters filed that report. Still to come, an animated series makes its debut on the Netflix streaming platform, shining a spotlight on the Zambian capital. Stay with us.
Despite significant advances made towards gender equality, women are still underrepresented in political decision-making and leadership in many countries. More than 130 nations have introduced gender quotas. On this week's episode of Our Voices, we will review what quotas are and how it contributes to political empowerment of women. We will also have experts to discuss whether quotas increase female leadership and influence policy outcomes. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
You're watching VOA's Red Carpet. My name is Jackson Vunganyi. Thank you so much for joining us each week right here on Red Carpet. We bring you the latest in
In other news, Zimbabwe's main opposition party, Citizens Coalition for Change, led by its president, Nelson Chamisa, is calling for peaceful nationwide protests and a rerun of elections that resulted in President Emmerson Mnangagwa winning his second term in office. Burkina Faso's government has approved a bill authorizing the dispatch of troops to neighboring Niger, which faces a possible military intervention by ECOWAS to restore civilian rule following a coup of Niger's democratically elected president, Mohamed Bazoum. And at least 48 people died amid a recent crackdown on anti-United Nations protests in the city of Goma in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, according to sources and official documentation reviewed by the AFP news agency. Two former leaders of the far-right Proud Boys extremist group, Joseph Biggs and Zachary Rell, were sentenced to 17 and 15 years in prison for spearheading an attack on the U.S. Capitol to try to prevent the peaceful transfer of power from Donald Trump to Joe Biden after the 2020 presidential election. An original animated series from Africa has made its debut on the Netflix streaming platform. The series, dubbed Super Team 4, was written by a young Zambian. Kathy Short reports from Lusaka.
4 teenage girls who happen to be superheroes on a mission to save the world. That is the plot of the African animated series Super Team 4, now streaming on Netflix. Zambian writer and creator Malenga Mlendema told VOA that she loved watching cartoons as a child but never saw herself represented in any way. She says that with Super Team 4, she gets to see Africa, African characters, and Zambia's capital Lusaka on the screen.
So using, these fun, relatable characters, we tell stories that are full of action, lots of humor, some silliness, but lots of heart.
Mlendema enjoyed the collaboration that went into making an animated series.
I can't wait to buy them. I'm going to get them.
It was fun to know that we could move forward and incredible artists from around the world could come on board and then just put everything together that we now see streaming on Netflix now.
Zambian voice actor Zoangwira portrays K Bongo, a teenage superhero who is passionate about science and education.
For me, my experience was, I think it was a mixture. It was a mixture of exciting. I was a bit nervous, but most of all, I learned a lot from the experience.
Many film animators in Zambia are self-taught but lack technical support, says Akende Muyumbana. Despite the challenges, Akende Muyumbana, creative director at Utopia Studios in Lusaka, has persevered.
I think Super Team 4 had one of the best releases for animation in Africa, because genuinely there is a disparage between Africa and animation, with art in fact as a general whole, but they really did open a door for animation.
South Africa's Triggerfish Studios, which produced Super Team 4, is set to release other animation shows this year on the Netflix, Disney and Showmax Entertainment platforms. Triggerfish creative director Anthony Silverstone told VOA that 2023 has been a great year for African animation.
The medium of animation actually could employ so many different people across the range, from concept artists, writers, to lighting artists, to production people, to finance people. But then the other part, which is the kind of side that excites me, is just the fact that people actually get to see more African stories and more African people and more cultures from the diverse continent that we actually are.
Industry experts like Silverstone say that production of animated films and television is on the rise in Africa, and that talent is also in abundance. All that remains is for opportunities to open up for the continent's animators. Kathy Short for VOA News, Lusaka, Zambia.
Now to our Friday entertainment. Patrick Okwe Osadebe is the eldest child of the late Nigerian highlife icon Chief Osadebe. He carries on the tradition and preserves his father's legacy with his band, the Highlife Soundmakers International. Heather Maxwell joins him and his bandmates for a live performance from VOA Studios in New York. He's also joined by guitarists Fidelis Mazua and Ray Clark. Hello, Heather.
Hi, Esther. Yes, I'm here in New York with Okwe Osadebe, and the guys are going to perform some music. But first, let me welcome them. Hello, guys. Welcome to the set. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
So before we get to the music, let me find out where you're all from. I know you're in Connecticut now. Have you been living there a long time, Okwe?
Yes, I've been living there a long time. Yes.
But you are Nigerian.
Yes.
So how long have you been here?
I've been here about 29 years. Yes.
Oh, so you feel Nigerian and American at the same time?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, Ray, how about you?
Yeah, so I was born here in Hartford, Connecticut. I'm not Nigerian as far as I know, but I've just been introduced to the music and the culture, so I'm glad to be a part and playing with.
And how long have you been playing with the guys?
About 8 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Fidelis?
I've been here 12 years now, but I've been coming here before that time. I've been coming since year 1994.
Okay.
Which was the first year I came here. We began to come year after year, year after year.
And you're also Nigerian?
Yes, I'm from Nigeria.
Igbo?
Yes.
Have you been playing with Okwe for a long time?
Yes, I've been playing with him since I came here, since 12 years now.
Okay. And before that?
Before that, I was playing with the dad, the father.
With his dad. And we'll get to that later. But first, let's get to some music. What are you going to perform for us?
So we're going to do a song titled Igbo Amaka, meaning Igbo is beautiful.
Oh.
Okay. All right.
Ready?
wee dozie obodo anyị nụ na nugo ụmụ Igbo ka anyị were obi gabanụ wee chebe ma dozie ebe anyị nụ Igbo kwenu onye olima Igbo melu mmadụ nyanụ ọ bụ injinia ka ọ bụ kapịnta Igbo melu mmadụ nyanụ kọmputa na teknọlọji Igbo bụ isi nyanụ ọlụ ọbụla na-agụ n'akwụkwọ Igbo juru eju na fanchanụ ma nnọbụ anyị jikọta aka ọnụ wee dozie obodo anyị nụ na nugo ọ dịla iru onye ọzọ mmanụ anyị ebili nụ na mulinu Ani Igbo amaka, Ani Igbo amaka, ndị Igbo dị ụsọ, ndị Igbo dị ụsọ, udo na nwuli, eji mala n'Igbo, ka anyị wechiata ya, ka anyị welie agaba, ọganiru, ndụ narụ ike, nyaka anyị na-ayọ, nyaka anyị na-ayọ Chukwu, Ani Igbo amaka, Ani Igbo amaka. Ndị Igbo dị ụsọ, ndị Igbo dị ụsọ, udo na aṅụli eji iwela n'Igbo, ka anyị wechiata ya, ka anyị welie agaba, ọganiru, ndụ narụ ike, nyaka anyị na-ayọ, nyaka anyị na-ayọ Chukwu, Ani Igbo amaka, Ani Igbo amaka, ndị Igbo dị ụsọ, ndị Igbo dị ụsọ, udo na aṅụli eji mala anyị Igbo, ka anyị wechiata ya, ka anyị welie agaba, ọganiru, ndụ narụ ike, nyaka anyị na-ayọ, nyaka anyị na-ayọ Chukwu.